Hello, I'm making two videos today, so I'm wearing the same top as in another video you might have watched. What do you think about the difference between men and women, especially older men and women in middle-aged men and women? I mean, I suppose I'm 68, so I suppose I'm not even middle-aged. I must be elderly now, because middle-aged would technically be 40s, really, wouldn't it? Because middle age, not many people live to be 100, so basically not 50 is not even middle aged, it's heading towards elderly, I suppose. But anyway, in our age group, whether we're in our 50s or 60s, 70s even, I love the differences between men and women. Now, you know, you'll be like me. I would imagine if you're in your 60s, you grew up in a time where we were resilient. We were resilient, weren't we? You know, there was no pandering, there was no mollycoddling or any of that. You know, there was no feeling sorry for yourself. And, you know, even the experiences as children, I had a very dysfunctional childhood. Not as bad as some people's, not as nice as other people's. But it was a tough childhood. And when I look back on it, I can see how tough it was. But anyway, the point of all of that ramble there was that you had to be resilient in those days. And I'll tell you a little story here that is true. I'd had to go and live with my dad and my stepmother when I was about 11, I think. Yeah, just before I started secondary school, grammar school. My mother had disappeared off somewhere, didn't see her again for 19 years, just gone. And it wasn't a happy time living with my dad and my stepmother either. It was a whole different set of circumstances. Yes, you had a roof overhead. Yes, you were fed. Yes, you were clothed. But there was nothing much else. You know, there was no loving, nurturing at all. Whereas at least with my mother, there was chaos, but there had been love. Whereas with them, there was more order, but there was no love. And I remember being a young teenager and getting very stressed and running away. I don't know where the hell I was going. I must have had a panic one day and ran, and my father came after me in his van. And I ran down the steps of a railway station. And my father had collared a policeman along the way, stopped a policeman, and the policeman came after me and grabbed me. And he said to me, "Are you being beaten?" And I said, "No, because I wasn't. I wasn't being beaten. There was mental and emotional punishment, but there was not physical punishment." And he said, "Are you being starved?" And I said, "No." But I couldn't explain as a child how empty and lonely I felt. And he said to my father, "Take her home and give her a good hiding." Now, so if I'm 68 now, if I was maybe I don't know, 12 at the time, so we're going back, what's that, 12, 50, we're going back more than 50 years. So of course it's not like that now, but it was then, wasn't it? You might not have been in the same situation, but it was like that. You had to be tough. Yeah, there was no feeling sorry for yourself. There was nobody out there to, no safe spaces and nothing, triggering. If you got triggered, you got triggered. Nobody even knew the word. Well, the word trigger was a perfectly good English word, but it had nothing to do with your mental health. And so we grew up in a very, very, very different era. And then, men did this and women did that. And I had two ex-husbands. One I was with from meeting at 15, engaged at 17, married at 21. I left him at 26. Second husband, I think I met him about a year after I left my first husband. We never had children, me and the first husband. And then met my second husband, and then we were together 18 years, had 3 children. I left him in 2005. And there were some very, very dark times by the time I left. Pretty damn dark. And because I had the resilience, then, I never had a penny towards the upkeep of my children off my second husband. And that was fine because I had the resilience. I had the wherewithal. I could do this. I dug in deep. I was self-employed. I kept us going. And there were tough times, but we did it. But I don't know how many people nowadays, younger people nowadays, have that resilience, and it's probably, I'm sure it's not their fault. So we had a tough grounding, didn't we, when you look back? Also, I can be grateful as the result of having two bone-idle, lazy, selfish husbands who were both very fond of the alcohol, that I learned to do a lot of things. I turfed gardens. I even fixed my old first car, a beat-up old Vauxhall. Oh gosh, I forgot the name of it now. It'll come back to me. A really old car, and somebody had hand painted it brown. It was a real banger, but they were quite simple to fix in those days. And I actually learned to do some repairs on my car. I built a brick fireplace. I did all kinds of stuff thanks to lazy idle husbands. So you see, there's a silver lining in everything. But now, so I'm not saying that, the good old days when men were men and, women were women. But it is true that there were differences, and those differences, not all of them, but generally speaking, the masculine energy, the feminine energy, it's part of life. It's there for a reason. And I like the way men think. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a man basher, but what I do know is that middle-aged men moan. Oh my goodness, you moan so much. What is that about? I've heard it. I've heard men doing it. I have a partner in my life who, by his own admission, can be a real moaner when he gets on that trajectory. But I don't know. It's just part of them, part of their wiring, their makeup. But I like the differences. And there are days when I'm masculine, and there are days when I feel very feminine. That does not make me, non-binary. Nowadays, the younger people can't accept that you can feel masculine and feminine at the same time, because we're a mix of both. Well, that is what I believe to be true anyway. But when I used to do car boot sales, or in some parts of the world they call them garage sales, I suppose, what I used to smile about was men would gather around boxes full of bits of metal and wire and stuff like that, and they'd root through. They loved them. They were drawn like moths to a flame. And that always gave me a bit of a warm, I don't know why, silly really, a bit of a warm tingle. Oh, look at the men doing the men thing. Or, around the barbecues, you would tend to see the men gathered. And my partner of 20 years, and believe you me, we've had our ups and downs, but I suppose in a lot of ways we've fallen into the masculine and feminine roles, although I see to the finances, because he just, he couldn't cope with dealing with the finances. I'm pretty good at robbing off Peter to pay Paul. He would just stress. So it's much better that he has nothing to do with it. And the kitchen is my domain, and that is not, because he's lazy and won't come in there. No, the kitchen's my domain. I quite like it that way. We've lived in this house a year. He still doesn't know where some things are in the kitchen. I don't think he even knows how to use a washing machine, actually, which is not good, because if I dropped dead tomorrow, he'd be stuck. But on the other hand, he he fixes things. He's always fixing things, and also, he's really good at arranging things. He's got this creativity that I don't have. I'll plonk things here and there. Yeah, and I'm a woman and I'm supposed to, be creative and know how to make a home. He'll come in and rearrange things, and they look fabulous in a way I could never even entered my head. If there's some piece of thing to be put together, he'll get all the instructions out and he'll lay them out. Oh, me? No. I lose the will to live, so I'll just start, if I was doing it, I'll just start trying putting things together. So, and also he cleans the car inside and out, which I love because I can't stand cleaning the car inside and out. He does the heavy work in the garden. He insists on doing the heavy work. But, there are still days when he needs a bloody kick up the bum. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but there are still days when, if he can't do something physical, he doesn't know what to do with himself. And because we get a lot of bad weather here in the UK, because we've had over 6 months of rain and wind and blah, 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 there have been times when he's been mooching around like a bear with a sore head. Whereas me, I have got loads of interests. I can, I'm a writer, self-published writer. I've got my own work that I do. I'm a reader. I make YouTube videos. I write blog posts on my website. I can brush up on my kickboxing combinations and all of that sort of stuff if I need to. So, and also I can, I'll go in. I like getting in the kitchen and getting my headphones in, getting my rubber gloves on and giving the whole place a damn good clean. I enjoy doing that every now and then. So, but I don't know whether men find it harder to entertain themselves than women do. So maybe they do, maybe they don't. You can't generalise, can you? But I like the way that men think and operate and work. I like the differences between women and men. And I'm so sorry to be seeing that squashed out and diluted and watered down. Women became very, very, very angry. And I'm not saying there weren't reasons to be angry, but I think they got stirred up by some really bitter and twisted individuals. And now men seem to be, especially younger men, they seem to be lost souls. And something I've noticed about single men in their 40s, I have noticed this, they're quite immature. They are struggling to settle down, and the dating pool now, because I know something about this, I know quite a lot about this. The modern dating pool is, wow, it is a minefield. There are a lot of women who are looking for maybe the top, I don't know what you call them, top 1% of males. A lot of women are chasing after those. Then these males know that they've got a huge pool of women to choose from. And so what I'm noticing with men in their 40s, not all, but a lot of single men in their 40s, that actually they're a bit like children stuck in the sweet shop, and they're not that keen to settle down, and that's causing problems for women who are looking for partners. So it's wow. I am so glad for the simplistic world that we had. It was not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. No, it wasn't. But it was a lot more simple, and it was easier for a man to be a man. And yet, in those days, more so than nowadays, men, they were ridiculous at times, that this is women's work. And, it used to be, for a lot of families, Christmas Day, the woman was in the house cooking Christmas dinner for everybody while the man went off to the pub and got drunk. That was a really common working class habit. So there's a lot of things about the past in terms of, the dynamics between men and women that were not great and that are better nowadays. I don't know where the future's headed. I really don't know. I have no idea. I have no answer. But I wish we could get back to the more defined roles. Maybe I'm being clumsy in the way I'm saying it. But yeah, I wish we could. Oh, anyway, again, I've rambled on. But you know what? I'm going to this is quite therapeutic for me. And I'm going to see just how many people can actually tolerate it. Actually, how many people tune in? How many people can bear it? How many people bother coming back? It'll probably be like, one of these Western films where, the baddies are coming into town and everybody's cleared off and behind closed doors, and then you see the brushwood going across the road. Probably be a little like that. But we can only give it a shot, can't we? Anyway, as always, I'm supposed to say, please don't forget to like and subscribe. But as most people don't watch any YouTube video all the way through to the end, I'm probably speaking to either one or two people or nobody at all. Anyway, thank you for tuning in if you did and you're still here. Bye.